Hello, and welcome to the Talent Empowerment Podcast. I am your host, Tom Finn, co-founder and CEO of Leg Up. Each week, we journey into the minds of game-changing CEOs, executives, talent development savants, and successful leaders from a variety of industries. We dissect their strategies, explore their career paths, and uncover how they're fostering a people-first culture within their communities. Our mission, our goal, to help you love your job and supercharge your career. So let's get started and dive right in. Welcome to the show, my friend. Today we are learning and sitting down with Eric Liedtke. Eric, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me.
We are excited to have you. I cannot wait to get into all things apparel with you today. If you don't know Eric, he is the co-founder and CEO of the Unless Collective. It is the world's first regenerative fashion brand. Formerly a very senior executive at Adidas, Eric led groundbreaking initiatives in material innovation and sustainability. He drove over $8 billion in revenue growth, that's with a B, in just 6 years. And with a career spanning 26 years, Eric is recognized in his consumer-led innovation, including the creation of Adidas Boost, and those of you might know, the billion-dollar Yeezy brand. So Eric, with all of that as a background in consumer work and fashion, how have you seen attitudes of the consumer change towards sustainability and eco-friendly products over time?
That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely been a journey, right? Even for myself. But if we focus on the consumers, I think, back in the day when I started my career, it was what we would call, millennials. We started talking to millennials, which were, a certain breed of consumers that are now occupying the majority of the workforce. They were not as concerned about it, about sustainability in general, as the research would later show that Gen Z and Gen A are definitely coming up, Gen Alpha. I think what I found over my time in the research is that consumers want to make a difference in general. They care about things like Me Too movements. They care about Black Lives Matter. They care about climate change. They don't always know how they can lean in, other than doing the most obvious things like activism and those types of honors. They don't know that their purchases can be the critical ground floor driver of creating change and who they support with their money. Because as we live in a capitalist world, let's be honest, your purchases then affect capitalism. It affects consumerism. It affects what you're offered on a daily basis. So as we were doing a lot of research at Adidas, and when we led the turnaround, we knew that the consumers, they cared about us as a sports brand, right? We have to make product that helps them jump higher, run faster, kick stronger. We recognized that the culture of sport doesn't change when you leave the pitch or when you leave the court. It goes with you into the hallways, into the streets, into the music venues. And that's where, Beyonce and, Taylor Swift and Kanye and everybody else kind of comes to the forefront and starts to have an impact. But we also recognize that, every one of us have a 24/7, doom scroller on our hands that Scroom stole, and that we Scroom stole, that we definitely scroll through the trials and tribulations of our daily lives, and we're exposed to things more and more readily than ever before. So if they want to make a difference in all three of those areas, as a sports brand, you have to figure out how you can do that. And what we heard loud and clear through our actions with Parley for the Oceans when I was at Adidas is that shot to the top of all three. So when we did our Parley for the Oceans, and when we launched our product at the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, so primarily talking probably to Gen Z at that time, that post we did with a drowning sea turtle in gill nets, saying we were curing for that by making footwear out of recovered ocean plastic gill nets, went as far and as wide as anything we ever did with Lionel Messi or Kanye West. And that was the kind of aha moment to unlock the brand's positioning to say, this is not just philanthropy. This is good for business because the consumers are really leaning into it. They want to see the obvious connection to buying that shoe is going to help clean my oceans. And when you make it that easy, when you make the product and the story so intertwined that they can see that their purchases are making that difference, you'll see it continue to build up. And now there's ocean plastic companies all over the place. There's ocean plastic supply chains. There's ocean plastic footwear brands. There's ocean plastic bag brands. There's ocean plastic just really prevalent all over the place. And it's because of that single use case that we did in 2015. And the next step is, how do we lean into Generation Alpha? Let's talk about them for a second. They're the first generation that's going to grow up not knowing a world without climate change. It's going to be front and center in their face each and every day. I mean, if you look at the floods that just happened in Dubai the other day, they had a year's worth of rain in one day. You can't tell me that the earth is not going through dramatic changes based upon climate warming. And we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how dire that's going to be for different populations, different countries, different people. We know that it's all going to fall right on the backs of Generation Alpha, which are kids that are being born and are in their early ages right now. So I think it's 11 years and younger at this point is Generation Alpha. I have two at my house. They're talking about it each and every day in different ways, and it's interesting to discover it. So it's changed dramatically from, if you go from all the way to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z, now Gen Alpha. It's not a nice to have. It's not something you can do when everything else is running smoothly. It's something you need to do right now. And if you want to drive innovation, you want to drive change in your industries, you have to speak to the consumers where they are and pick them up. It doesn't mean you have to wag your finger. It just means you have to give them an option to do something a little bit better for their world.
So I think what I'm hearing is all of this started when you were at Adidas. You started to get the wheels turning from an advertising initiative that created a ton of buzz. So help us understand, when we're thinking about what's in the ocean and we're thinking about plastics, help us make that leap of, here's what's actually going on. Here's what we're taking from the ocean, or here's what we're taking from the land. Here is the recyclable that we're utilizing, and here's how it impacts. Like, help me make that leap.
It's a journey for all of us. And like you and I were talking before the show started about like your journey. It's like you weren't aware that 70% of what you wear is made from petroleum-based products. And that's called nylons. It's called synthetics. It's called polyester. It's called a lot of different things. It all stands for things that come from a petroleum-based feedstock. And so fashion has really jumped on that bandwagon because that's how everything can get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Not just cheaper in cost, but cheaper in quality. And I get really tired of people saying, oh yeah, fashion's so cheap. It's so cheap. It's so affordable. Synthetic's so cheap. It's not cheap. It's actually costing us lives. Because if you look at the data and everything, all these things are breaking down into microplastics, nanoplastics. They're entering into our bodies through the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat. And some of us are consuming up to a credit card worth of plastics a week. And now the studies are showing us that this is causing havoc in our bodies. It's entering our arteries where it's causing clots. It's entering our brains where it's causing Alzheimer and dementia. It's entering it's 10 times more prevalent in placentas. Now, placentas only are there for 9 months. Think about what the baby is now experiencing as they ingest what's coming in from their mother on a nutrient basis. So I just want to put that aside as a quick education. As much as what you think you eat at the grocery store is important, what you wear is just as important. And my journey on that was like any of yours that your listeners are having right now. I had no idea. I was part of I had a storied 26-year career at Adidas. I helped make stuff and helped get cheaper stuff made in Asia. And only did I wake up back towards when I ran president in 2014, when Parley for the Oceans came in my office and said, hey, would you like to save the oceans? And I was like, yeah, sure. But what does that have to do with selling more shoes and apparel? And they slowly educated me on, well, you're contributing to the problem with the oceans by making all these synthetic products that then basically leach microfibers, nanofibers that are, synthetics are primarily forever materials. Once you make them, they never go away. They're hundreds and hundreds of years. So even though it leaves your closet, it goes somewhere else and just starts to shed out into our, whether it be a landfill or whether it be just in the ground, that then starts to shed into micros and nanoplastics that then start to contribute to, more and more detriment to people that consume it like ourselves. But you have to kind of go on that journey. So it's ending up in the oceans, it's ending up in our water supplies, it's ending up in the ground, and it's breaking down, but it is a forever material. And the forever materials just enter into the food chains, which then cause havoc in living organisms like ourselves.
So I want to go back to this term that you've used a couple of times, and I want to make sure I heard it correctly because
Yep.
you're saying it really quickly. Parley for the oceans.
Yeah, Parley for the Oceans is a ocean advocacy group, basically that brings attention to these matters in the state of the oceans, whether it be the rising water temperatures, or whether it be the plight of the fish stocks, or whether it be the acidity of the oceans. But what they brought to us at Adidas was the knowledge of ocean plastics, and they helped to really galvanize the knowledge and understanding of what ocean plastics are not just doing to the health of the oceans and the organisms that live there, but what they ultimately do to us, as they educate me very quickly. Every second breath we take comes from the oceans. So if we start to hurt the nutrient cycle in the oceans that's producing all this oxygen for us, we're actually hurting ourselves. So again, it's a longer, more complex, nuanced story than that, but those are some high level takeaways.
So you're at Adidas, you're going through this personal process. You're trying to figure out, how do I make a bigger impact?
Yep.
So how did you make that leap to leave and start your own company?
Yeah. So first of all, for a guy that loves sport, loves thinking about sport, doing sport, having done sport, it made me bounce. It made me happy. I think I had the best job in the world. But these guys from Parley put this information in my head in 2014. And so then I jumped on it. And at Adi, I did everything I did. I picked a fight with plastic, right? We're going to do everything. We're going to eliminate plastic bags at retail. We're going to eliminate plastic bottles on campuses. We're going to eliminate plastic beads in our beauty care. We're going to get off of, this is a moonshot we gave ourselves. We're going to get off of virgin polyester feedstock, again, the stuff you make product from, by 2024. We did all that. I left before 2024, but they honored that through. And so everything at Adidas is made out of recycled polyester, which is a great first step. But when you start hearing and understanding the real plight of the oceans, and then you helicopter up to really the plight of plastics and the fashion industry's reliance on these petroleum-based products that are forever materials that never go away, you can only whisper yourself to sleep so often. You can't, it's like you can't unhear and unsee what you've heard and seen. So at the end of 2019, I was 52 years old. I had, climbed the mountain at Adidas, and I said, if not now, when? If not you, who? I think I need to go outside and really try to disrupt the entire fashion industry by pioneering this regenerative fashion concept, which is basically simply making things out of plants and minerals that harmlessly go away when you're done using them. And so what we've done with Unless Collective is we've built everything from plants and minerals, and we've modeled everything from knits and wovens, hoodies and t-shirts and jackets, to socks and shoes. And we've said all these things can be made with the right brief and the right approach with your engineers and designers out of plants and minerals. You do not need to use petroleum-based products that cause havoc on the world when you're done using it. Even though it's cheaper. It's cheaper to use polyester. It's cheaper to use petroleum. It's not better, and it's actually long-term not cheaper, because it's actually causing you your health.
So I want to double down on something you just said, which is such an entrepreneurial comment. If not now, when? If not me, who? Who's going to do this work, and when's it going to be done if it's not me? And most entrepreneurs hold themselves accountable to a higher standard than the rest of the market. And what I'm hearing you say is you went through that personal process to really figure out, you know what, this is my time. This is my time to step up, put this thing on my shoulders, and walk the path.
Yeah, I feel like you're 100% correct. So a couple things there. Because I'm not your typical 22-year-old garage startup. I'm a senior, 30-year industry veteran. I've had my time I've built my career up, and I had some success where I have some financial stability, and I can afford to be very pure and very driven. And I do believe, and this is something I've heard you talk about in your previous podcast, having a purpose, having a higher calling in life can really resonate with not just yourself, your family, your employees, and your consumers. It's like trying to really set a real stretch goal in your upper right-hand corner of your whiteboard and say, that's the destination. We're going to, we're going to create a industry. We're going to systemically change this industry and get it off of these poisonous chemicals and feedstocks. And so we're going to create a brand that's very tightly focused on no harmful waste to end of life. Right? It's a very specific brief, because that's how designers and engineers think. They need a brief, and then the world can innovate against it. But you need that clear brief to go after it. And it wasn't going to happen at Adidas. And a lot of people ask me that. Why didn't you just stay at Adidas? Because Adidas has a million priorities, and there's a lot of mouths to feed, and you've got to manage to 30 or 60 or 90-day return, earnings, and you have to really manage the public company. You have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure your business keeps going up with your bottom line. And we could talk forever about that. And we did what we could, and we moved the needle as much as we could. But I learned from Parley example when I brought Parley inside, which, by the way, Parley scaled to I'm guessing over $1 billion worth of business for Adidas today. So it's really scaled up really nicely, and saying, okay, what if I go outside with less, and I create this better way, this pioneering this way of regenerative fashion, and then I can go back into the bigs as a partner, as a collaborator, as an instigator, to try to get them to scale this with the urgency that the world and the people need to see. Because ultimately, we're not really focused on creating generational wealth for a few of us with a new brand. The world doesn't need a new brand. What we need to do is scale it as a lighthouse, a pioneer for others to then to follow or join with, to really scale this with the urgency that we can systemically change the industry. Well, I take a lot of learnings from that with, the Tesla example with electric vehicles, or the plant-based proteins example with Oatly, with, how they've scaled different kind of milks. It's like, so there's learnings out there and case studies that I've looked at and studied really hard to apply that, then say, okay, fashion needs this. What's next? Toys need this. Okay, beauty needs this. I mean, there's so many industries that need this kind of disruption, this kind of approach with a tightly scripted brief.
All right. So let's play devil's advocate here. What do you say when somebody says, okay, hippie, look, I want my cheap clothes on Amazon. I want to be able to buy nice suits at Nordstrom. And I want to be able to do all of that at an affordable price.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And that's why everything we do, first of all, thank you for the hippie comment. Not gonna bite me.
I had to go there, right?
Listen, we're very intentional that we're not making fair trade here. We're not making something where we're wagging our finger at you saying you should feel guilty about buying stuff. Stop buying things, consumer. It's like, no, we believe we have to meet them where they don't sacrifice their taste for their values, nor their values for their taste. We have to come to where the consumer is today. I'm long enough in fashion to understand that you're not going to teach consumers new behaviors, but you can make better things for them to consume. So we take a rigorous approach to unit economics. And what I mean by that is you cannot ask the consumer to pay exorbitantly more. So everything we're applying to this has the ability, and this is where my innovation background comes in. Anybody can make one of one. You can make one of one. You can go in a laboratory and make one thing of one thing. It doesn't matter what the cost is. And you can say, look, I have a prototype of that one thing. It's really hard to get unit economics at scale. So every time when I was at Adidas or when I'm at Les, when we look at innovations, when we look at new materials, when we look at solutions that we're trying to have, whether it be glues or leathers or whatever it may be that are substitutes for the existing products on the shelf, we have to say, okay, does this give us the parity of pricing from a cost standpoint, or does it have the ability to get there in 3 to 5 years based on scale? So everything we're applying right now has that ability to get there within 3 to 5 years with the necessary scale, which is why the model we're doing it on less is like, hey, we want to build that lighthouse brand. But to your point, we know we're not going to compete with your Shein t-shirt or your Nordstrom suit today. We won't do that until we partner up with the bigs to scale our volume. And the big guys will come on board and partner with us because the story is so rich. They're going to win the consumers because the consumer is going to demand this. And policy is going to enforce this. It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. We'll be there with the ready-made solutions so that we can give it to them because we figured out all the different pieces of here's the materials, here's where you got to make it, here's how you make it, here's how you print it, here's how you dye it, here's how you deliver it, here's how you collect it, here's how you put it back in the ground. That regenerative creation model we've modeled out now over the past few years. So we're able to plug and play different partnerships into that which then we can get more efficiencies, which we can get our costs down, which can give you what you want if you're not a hippie that likes to pay more.
Yeah, you got to throw the hippie context in the conversation, right? Look, for those that are thinking about unit economics, Eric's making some very strategic points here that need to be explained a little bit. So what he's talking about is scalability within a product suite, which allows you to take a product not being a one of one, scale it to something meaningful, and have an economic model that allows the cost to go down as the scale goes up, not the cost to go up as the scale goes up. That is the critical math that has to work for something like this to be mainstream. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, you summed it up a lot better than I did, but that's why you're sitting on the other side of the mic.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. I think it's fantastic. What I did hear you say is I don't want to compete with the largest brands in the world. I want to show them the path and partner. Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the uniqueness of our model. And again, I've applied that from my days at Adidas, because some of our best things were these open source type of approaches. Whether it be the Kanye West story, where listen, we kind of said, hey, say what you will about Ye, right? He's a creator, he's a genius creator, and that doesn't mean it doesn't come with some sort of cost to his personal being, but he taught Adidas how to create in a different way of thinking, and I think we embraced that. We did the same thing with 3D printing when we partnered with Carbon 3D, which is we were the largest 3D manufacturer in the world for a period of time there, because we were making so many shoes off of digital light synthesis, which is, if you don't know about it, it's fantastic. We did the same thing with Parley for the oceans. These outside in collaborations all helped us be a better brand, that helped us produce those results that you spoke about earlier in the introduction. You don't get 8 billion growth in sales by standing flat footed. You have to lean into doing new and different things. And so what I kind of took away from that was, okay, what if I'm one of those outside disruptors? What if I'm one of those people but I do it with a sustainability take? What if I do it from a regenerative standpoint? What can I then offer the big companies that they would need from me that they can't do themselves? And what I offer them is innovation that's on consumer desire, that addresses policies that are being made, that has the unit economic approach that can be accretive to their bottom line, their top and bottom line, when they, as we scale this thing. And it gives them one hell of a cool story to tell, because all of our product, and we like to show it in these forms, it goes away within, if you put it in an industrial composter, it goes away within 2 weeks. Now, if you put it in your backyard, based on where you live, I live in the Oregon coast, it may go a little faster than the high desert of Oregon, but it's like a comparison of an oak tree at that point. It's just cellulose-based material, which is plant-based material. It goes away, and the natural enzymes and the environment will eat it naturally. Now, if you want to accelerate it, we have a partnership with Agromin, which is the largest industrial composter in California. They make our stuff go away really fast. So give the product back to us, and we'll send it down to them, and they'll make it go to nutrient-rich soil within 2 weeks.
So when you talk about plant and mineral-based clothing,
yep,
I visualize you picking leaves off a tree and somehow stitching them together with sticks and stones and building me the most uncomfortable shirt that could ever be worn. Yep. Help me get the right frame of reference on what this really looks like.
Think about cotton. Think about linen. Think about hemp. Think about bamboo. All these materials are in your everyday solutions. They're in your product that you shop. It's a question of what's the percentage. So a lot of times, one of the more comfortable shirts you may wear is going to be like 30% cotton, 30% polyester, 30% nylon, so it has a little stretch and you feel good in it. We make, in my opinion, and it's not maybe not the most objective, the most comfortable T-shirt you're ever going to wear, because it's 100% cotton. It feels good, but you also have the knowledge it's there. So even the way we printed it and dyed it, it's not going to shed anything harmful into your environment that your kids or your family need to breathe or drink or eat in. So to me, it's about using the set that has been made already from a plant standpoint, and not just cotton's been something. I've inherited my parents' clothing for years, and it's been cotton, wool, or leather based, right? So these natural materials have existed. They predate plastics. They predate polyesters. We just got away from them because the cost, the unit economics of polyester is just so much cheaper. But what we have now is we have to go back a little bit and remember what we knew once upon a time. But the other question I get, and before you get there, Tom, is, is it going to biodegrade in my washing and drying machine? And the answer quite clearly is no. Our stuff will not, to decompose or to biodegrade. You need certain temperature, you need certain pressure, you need certain moisture, and then the enzymes can come in there and start to eat at it. So we cook all of our own stuff, and we call it cooking in our rotary composter at our office. And it takes quite a bit to get the stuff to go to get eaten or cooked down to back to being dirt. So it's not going to happen unless you want it to. It's going to wear as long as it's going to be as comfortable and it lasts as long as anything you have in your closet. And I would say it's even going to be better because the cheap stuff, polyester, will start to pill and start to fall apart much quicker, even though the material never goes away.
So in its simplest form, 100% cotton t-shirt fits the bill here. If it's 100% cotton, that is the type of thing we should be thinking about as consumers.
Yes. And unfortunately, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, doesn't really care about the labeling accuracy. So you can call your shirt 100% cotton, even if it's only 66% cotton. And what I mean by that is they care about the base material, and they'll say, okay, that needs to be, primarily 100% cotton, but your trims, your details, your prints, the way you put the product together with your stitching, all that can be nylons and synthetics. And that's where you get into more blend. Your labels, they can all be blended. So ultimately, if you have a 66% cotton t-shirt, you can call it 100% cotton. So I would just advise caution. If you care about this topic and you've listened this far into the podcast and you do, then I would just exercise caution on what you really want to, and do some research on the brands, because there's always a lot of people trying to take shortcuts and say, hey, we're plant-based, but it's just like 20% cotton or 30% cotton. And then, so we always joke and say, if you're a vegan, would you eat an 80% vegan hot dog? Probably not. So if you care about wearing what's better for you in the world and your family, you probably want to be more diligent in what the percentages really are and not just believe every label. So you have to do a little bit of research.
So when we think about your business, Eric, the Unless Collective, where is it in terms of the scale? Because you've gone from being high-end, big brand, global executive, pushing billions of dollars in sales, and now you're mission-driven entrepreneur, focused on the environment, thinking about your kids, trying to make the world a better place. Where are you guys in your evolution?
Yeah, so great question, and thanks for asking that. I always joke, I've gone from the penthouse, which I was super happy with, to the outhouse, and I'm actually super happy there too. But all that aside, I think the pieces are this. So we spent the last 3.5 years building a lighthouse brand, right? So we have, like I said, we've got everything from beanies to bucket hats to t-shirts to crew necks to hoodies to woven jackets, to pants, to socks, to shoes. So we've modeled everything from a woven to a knit apparel piece, including socks, which have stretch. Which every time you see stretch, you typically have to think that's a melted plastic. We made our socks out of mechanical stretch with natural rubber latex, and then we made shoes, which is really hard to solve for because you can't use glues, you can't use foams, so you got a lot of different pieces there. So we modeled all that up. We spent, a lot of money doing that over the last 3.5 years, but super proud to have that. The next step now is to really start to scale that with expanding our distribution, expanding our audience, expanding our partnerships. So now we're talking to, some of the other players in the industry that are quite large, quite a bit larger than us, but we're also talking to wholesalers, and we're in the midst of that right now. I'd say we're available on direct to consumer on lesscollective.com. We're opening up shops as we speak, and we're onboarding sales staff as we speak to try to further this message. We're looking at expanding to Europe by the end of this year. So we've got a lot of pieces in place. We are And we were talking to, like I said, brands from different sectors in the industry. And ultimately, that's where we'll see the most growth, I think, in the next 12 to 24 months, because the last 3 years have really been a build. And now we're positioned now to grow both from a direct-to-consumer, wholesale, and partnership standpoint.
So when you talk about partnerships, I want to dig in there a little bit.
Yeah,
When you talk
sure.
about partnerships, what actually happens in the structure of that deal? And here's what I mean. Do you pull off your logo and put on their logo and use your manufacturing and your design and those types of things, and now it's somebody else's logo and you're behind the scenes? Or is there some other way these deals get cut in terms of a partnership?
Yeah, I think there's two models there. I frame them up as a collab model, which is it can be Mammut by Unless, which we've done before, which is a Swiss brand, Swiss climbing brand, which we've done really cool in those collections we've put out there. We've got a few more like that, which is basically like we're bringing our audience, we're bringing our know-how to Mammut. They're bringing their audience, their know-how. We're collaborating for a better world, and we're celebrating that through graphics on existing product or creating new bespoke product together, right? And that can happen with anybody from Gap, H&M, Zara to Nike, Adidas, New Balance, Under Armour. It can happen to the whole world of fashion brands out there, and we're open to have those conversations. Furthermore, to your point of an Intel Inside type of ingredient, yes, we're open to that as well. We've done some things with like Robert Downey Jr., where we've provided product for his dream cars merchandise, where we basically take a back seat. We use our blanks, but it's really about Robert Downey Jr. and the Footprint Coalition and celebrating those aspects of that partnership where they can buy those things from us. We actually do the printing to make sure we still stay plastisol free, and then we ship it to their consumers as they have it. And so that's also a fruitful enterprise for us as well. So again, both those avenues are open. One's more of a, hey, we're Parley for the Oceans times Adidas type of model, and one's more, hey, here's a B2B solution. Now the B2B thing is interesting because there's never been a really regenerative offer in that world before. That's where the unit economics get really tough because you've got some players that are selling $3 t-shirts, and it's hard to match those price points at this point. But like I said, never say never, and a lot of people want this story. So it's Robert Downey's obviously a very core leader to sustainability. He's funded a venture capital fund called Footprint where they invest in just sustainable solutions. So he's all about this topic. So of course he's going to be on the one end of making sure his product he offers is very, very sustainable, very green. And there's the other end where people just want to have blanks, and that's a different answer. So we're more of a premium blank solution, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds that way. And I'm sort of thinking now about competition. And are you facing a lot of competition in your particular vertical? Set all the big brands aside for a second. Yeah. I'm talking, no plastics, no petroleum. No, really focused on.
There's a lot of people that say we're sustainable. Like everyone's screaming they're sustainable because it's trendy. I always caution people to say, hey, what do you mean by that? It's because there's so many different ways to say you're sustainable. It's like, oh, I can mean I'm using recycled polyester. I'm using ocean plastic. My life cycle analysis is lower than others. I'm using bioplastics. I'm using biofabrication. So there's a lot of words out there that are really, from a consumer standpoint, you almost need a PhD to work through them, at depth. So to me, it's like our story is so simple. Our story is regenerative. That's why we kind of stay away from the term sustainable. It's like regenerative has a very clear connotation. It means it adds value to the environment when you're done with it. It doesn't extract, it doesn't hurt. And to do that, it's really hard because we have to go the full mile, if you will. We have to do the last parts are always the hardest. People say, we're 90% plant-based. Well, the 10% is where the hard stuff is, right? Anybody can be 90%, but it's that extra 10% that really matters. So I would say I have not come across too many brands, if any, that are at this, that's this kind of diligence. And again, it goes back to our history. The co-founders and I have experience working in the industry for 20, 30 years. And we've made our livings in that regard. And this is kind of our play it forward. This is like, what what is our legacy? What is 7 generations going to say about us? So we're trying to fix the problems we saw, and so we don't want to take any half steps. We don't want to take any compromises, and because we're not taking any, we can be very pure where others cannot, maybe because they basically cannot afford to take these kind of these kind of pure routes that we are. There might be one or two out there, but I don't see them as competitors. I see them as collaborators and conspirers. I think we, to change this industry, it's going to take a village. And so we're constantly talking to people that have the same mission alignment as we do.
Look, that's a huge phrase that you ended with, mission alignment. And when you're doing something like this in such a heavy industry as fashion, right? I mean, fashion is a global industry. It doesn't just touch one person, it touches all of us around the world. It's a global business.
$3 trillion a year. It's massive.
Yeah, there's some real math behind it. That's for sure. I love that you're building this mission-driven, purpose-driven philosophy, because you can bring all the other boats with you. If you can make that tide rise, you can lift up all the other folks in the industry. I wonder, when you're sitting around, having a cup of tea or a cold beer with some of your buddies at the big brands, because that's the way the world works. All of them.
It's a small world.
Yeah, they've been your friends for 20 or 30 years, and you're sitting around and they're talking about the latest thing they're doing at Nike or Adidas or whatever the other big H&M, whatever the brands are, and you're going, man, I'm just grinding my tail off over here trying to do the right thing. Like, what does that conversation look like? Are they jealous that you took the leap of faith, or are you thinking, man, it'd be nice to be back in that cozy leather first class seat flying around the world?
Good question. That's a good question. I'll have to start to interrogate some of those guys about that. But I think, listen, I'd say a couple of things. I'd say startup life is not for everybody. And I have learned more in the last 4 years than I learned in decades before. I mean, not to say the Adidas time wasn't a great learning curve, but the acceleration of what you're learning by what you're doing and going through each and every day is massive. And it's not for the faint of heart. And it's you have to be ready for the world that awaits you, which is you don't have the executive suite, you don't have all the things that come with that, the teams, the support mechanisms, it's just you and your core team. And this weekend I'll be going to one motorcycle show, and we're sponsoring a bunch of skaters. They're gonna be at the skate ramp and BMXers. It'll be me. I'll be there with Tony or Anthony, and it's just like it'll be him and I, and we'll be working the booth and telling the story and carrying the flag up the hill. It's like that at Adidas. I never worked an event. It's like, so when you ask me if guys are jealous that I took the leap, I think they're pretty happy where they are, because I think they if they don't recognize the time commitment, the stress commitment, the cash flow, all the different things that go into it, I think that they're pretty happy where they are. Having said all that, it's giving me more freedom to do what I want to do and be more present with my family. Then I can work around me a little bit, knowing that it's not going to be no days a day off, but it's going to be my time. And I live my life on a term that you may like, which is 0 wasted hours. So when you're in the big company, you have a lot of meeting cultures and a lot of obligations to fulfill. And when you come outside that, you can say, if I'm not doing something for myself, my family, my friends, or my community or my world, I'm not doing it. And I live that each and every day for the last 4 years. And it's like, it comes with a great editing, basis, because you can decide whether I'm going to do this podcast or not. How's this going to help, me lean into those things? And each and every decision tree comes down to those questions. So I think I love it because I'm living a 100% purpose-driven life. And I think I wasn't able to do that all the time at Adidas, even though I had one hell of a time and I don't regret a day in my life. But it's an evolution, right? We're all on a journey of life.
So well said. You have to live your life by your design, not the design of whim or the design of others who put you in particular jobs or roles or countries. You have to design the life with intention that you want. And it sounds like, Eric, you have very much figured that out and are designing the life for yourself, your family, but also helping the rest of us learn and be educated around what type of clothes we should be wearing and how we should be treating the earth and how we should be looking at that from a much more global scale than perhaps, I thought of before we had this chat. So I thank you, my man. I thank you for the work that you're doing, the leap of faith that you took to believe in yourself, and for the great work that your team is going to do at Unless Collective.
Appreciate you, Tom. I appreciate those words. They mean a lot. And I think you have to live your life with purpose. And I think the future, and what I'll just add this to what you said. It's like, if you do that, everyone else leans in. And when you give that purpose or that permission to live with purpose at a big company like Adidas, you can't believe the employee reaction. I mean, the recruitment reaction, the employee reaction. Of course, it worked with the consumers, but I wasn't prepared, quite honestly, for the employees, because ultimately, when you live in a big company, employees are your consumers, consumers are your employees. And caring about something like ocean plastic really galvanized everyone. And it was amazing to see. It was amazing to watch. I just let go. I just started the little snowflake on top of the hill, and it rolled downhill. So what we're trying to do with Unless is doing it on a much more macro scale. It's like we're just trying to be that snowflake up on the hill and give permission to people to live a more purpose-driven life by supporting brands that are building things the way each of us want to buy them.
Yeah, beautifully said. And you can collect new clothing from Unless Collective at unlesscollective.com. I'm looking at it right now. You can shop all. You got tees, hoodies, shorts, pants, jackets, flannels, shirts, sneakers.
Got it all. Got it all.
We got it all. So check it out, and then we'll keep an eye out for some of your additional partnerships that I'm sure will be coming out in the next few months and years as you grow those deals globally. How can people get in contact with you, Eric? If they want to check you out, obviously they can get some merch on your website, but how can they get in contact with you?
Personally, I try to stay in touch with anybody that reaches out. You can hit me at Eric Liedtke, Eric.Liedtke on Instagram, or you can hit me on LinkedIn. So to me, it's happy to hear from anybody with any ideas or thoughts or opportunities.
Awesome, man. We'll put that in the show notes. Thanks for the great work you're doing. We're huge cheerleader here, just rooting you on your path. And I know you're going to do great things. This is going to scale beautifully the way that you're modeling it. So congratulations on your future success as well as your present.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to come on your show.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care.